that circle going.
I hooked up my.
I always say,
hooked up
because I
my
could never
Coke
get a
box.
turkey in it.
Oh, yes.
You know, back when
It worked.
Yeah.
But
I love this.
I couldn't get Amazon, I couldn't get Netflix.
So you got the certificates in it, and you know you're in the United States, but so you're going to have to work with Wytopia, and you're done with it.
Set it up.
You
Told me that they could switch the
the unfortunate thing is that as they crack down on these things, what they're really doing is they're pushing people back into piracy. I mean, but they'd done a really good job of making this kind of stuff available so that people weren't learning how to download without permission. But you start taking things away from people and not giving them options, well, then they're going to start trying their own ways to get a hold of this stuff. Well, are you still sending and receiving email okay?
Yeah, but if I have my computer on, if I have two computers on and a cell phone, all hooked to the internet, a message, internet email comes in, it may go to any one of the three, but not all three.
It should go to all three. So what that would mean is that whatever the last one it went to is configured to remove from the server instead of leaving it on the server.
It's not removed from the server. I just put the phone on.
Oh, Chester, you check your Google Gmail setting, set of tabs that goes across, and one of them is forward POP3 IMAP. At the bottom of that is the POP3 settings, and one of those settings is only new messages. And maybe that's it. Maybe Google, no, Gmail, settings, forward POP3 IMAP. Yeah, it's written something like that. POP3, and under the POP3 settings, there's something there about all messages, only new messages, only unread messages. And I would play with those settings because maybe one of your devices is making Google, if it's the solution, but it's something to try.
Scott, last week I was watching on
So they're used to the electric.
Yeah.
on my computer, and then I moved to my TV. There were three screens,
Okay.
and they weren't in sync on the computer. But when I went to the TV, they were, which is weird.
3 screens.
Yeah, you were the one up at the top.
Hey guys, I'm just going to bring our meeting to order and then we can revolt back down to chaos again. I am Scott Stimson. This is the San Carlos Computer Club. It's Tuesday at Tequilas. 9:15 has passed 5 minutes ago. And we've diverged into multiple conversations.
Scott set it up for me because I didn't know what was coming.
Well, thank you. We're just trying to organize and get started, that's all.
You started the meeting, I thought everybody was talking.
Yeah, everyone was talking. It's okay. You're right. Everyone was talking. You were just the last one talking. So, we've got a lot of regulars. Do we have any new people here? Yeah?
I'm James and I have a computer.
All right, James. We all feel for you. You can pick out a sponsor after the meeting. So, as always, I have brought some of my own topics, but I'm very happy to answer questions and hear from your topics. So, Judy's got a hand up?
I do.
Okay.
Tell us about the FaceTime with Apple thing.
I know nothing about the FaceTime with Apple thing. What's going on?
Well, they're telling us that
Almighty
we should
leader.
turn off.
I come here to
FaceTime.
learn, too.
To do what?
Turn off FaceTime until they have a fix in the works because people can.
People can.
eavesdrop
Oh,
without
really?
knowing.
I haven't seen that news at all.
I have news about that. I was listening to CBC, that's a Canadian Broadcasting this morning from Winnipeg, so they apparently they've shut it down already and they're putting a fix in. But what happened was people could be asked to join a group and when they didn't answer, their cameras and microphones went on anyway.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
I have an item.
So
Wait.
the solution right now is just to turn
Turn
off
it
your
off.
FaceTime.
Chester, you are an iPhone user,
No.
and what they're talking about is a compromise where FaceTime can turn itself on. And
No, I'm an Android user.
oh, you've switched to Android. That's right. Your grandkids that still use iPhones.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's crazy. but they're fixing it right now.
Yes.
They said that they're
Couple of days.
shutting, and it'll be back up in a couple.
No, in a couple of days we'll get the fix for it.
Oh, in a couple of days. Well, obviously it's not a priority then.
No, they said shut it down.
Oh, I miss Steve Jobs.
Or you can put a piece of tape over your camera. I don't know whether that works for your.
What about the sound?
I just can't imagine that being considered a solution if Steve Jobs was in charge. It's like, we are not going to tell them to stop using it. There's nothing wrong with it. They're holding it wrong.
He may go to jail.
What's that?
He may go to jail,
Who?
Steve Jobs.
He's dead.
He's dead.
He's dead.
He's in jail.
Oh,
Who are you talking about? You're talking about somebody else, aren't you?
yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yeah, he is dead.
They have presented the indictments now that they're going to use in the United States, and they're asking for extradition from Canada.
I thought they were granted.
No, it's not. She's under house arrest actually in Vancouver.
So
where she
she's
owns
still
two
there?
houses, Yeah.
All right.
They won't give it.
I mean, that's not all right. That's horrible. But, and I heard her, and I haven't seen anything to verify this, but I have heard that she was fired. Like they have released her from the company, hoping that was gonna deter what's going on with the United States.
One of our arguments is that they've had these kind of cases before where a company has misbehaved, and so far they've never indicted people. The workers or principals in the company have never been indicted before.
You're describing big business in the United States, and it's appropriate that they would choose a Chinese company to try this with.
Of course.
And it's apparently that it coincided with a meeting between Chinese officials and officials in Washington over some trade treaty that they're doing. So the indictments came up
Absolutely.
yesterday.
Wow.
Some timing like that.
Yep.
But the reason they got her is because her father is the founder of the company.
Yes. Well, that and she's number two. She's number two because her father's the founder of the
She was
company.
the CFO.
Yeah. And can you verify? Have you read that she was fired from the company?
No,
I
I
haven't read that.
I've heard a couple of different journalists in interviews talking about how they've let her go, but they've only said it like out of the corner of their mouth, and I haven't seen it written anywhere, so I wasn't sure whether that had happened or not.
Follow the money.
Yeah, her dad's worth over $3 billion, so I don't think she needs the job.
Right? Yeah, I agree.
She'll never leave Canada.
She'll never leave.
No, she won't.
Like WikiLeaks not leaving.
Right? She's gonna be like a. Boy, I don't know. Can we afford to make a Chinese martyr? I don't know.
Well, somebody
They
said.
would extradite her.
I'm-
said.
Oh, let's take turns. Chester, what was your
Yeah,
comment?
Bob said she'll never leave Canada, but they're extraditing her.
That's
No,
what they
won't.
want to do.
No,
that's
no,
what,
they won't.
That's what the
They'll
U.S.
never
wants
get
them
her-
to do.
They'll never get her in the United States. Watch.
Yeah, because there's several levels of court. You know, she's got to go to the provincial Supreme
Right.
Court and then the federal Supreme Court, and then there's actually she can go to the minister, so Minister of Justice.
It all goes back to the Clintons.
It'll take years to go through that process.
You're gonna blame that on Hillary?
We have
too?
Canadians in this group who think she's going to get extradited to the United States. Gary, you think they'll get?
The guy from Canada?
I have no idea, but I kind of doubt it. I'll go along with the
Hillary's partner
bureaucracy
from
part of it,
Canada.
where they'll tangle it up and a bunch of BS, and that'll never happen.
Yeah.
Well, they're apparently.
Yeah, that sounds like what they would do in the United States. Except in Canada, they do it with a smile. In the United States, they do it with a hammer.
And they say sorry.
That's a Mexican issue, isn't it? What has that have to do with Hillary?
I believe that better.
Because he
It's
said
too
to
important.
Hillary, you come in with your trust fund. And
Oh,
put your money in.
Oh,
bullshit.
really?
That's true. That
Come
is
on.
true. That is
I'm-
well
Where's your
documented.
tape?
Where's
Well,
my
Diane, show
my
me
tape?
the tape.
My duct tape.
I'll
Okay,
show
but
you.
I'm waiting for the computer angle on that, Bob. Make it a text story, please. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I started out asking you, because somebody here said we could get Netflix for free
Claro Video.
with Claro Video.
No, not
okay?
Netflix. Not Netflix. Claro
We get-
Video.
But Claro Video provides Netflix free.
No.
No.
No?
No.
Video all Spanish?
It's Hillary.
It's not necessarily, but it's geared towards.
And who said it's free?
It's
Every-
free.
It's supposed,
Free
well,
side
it is
is
If you
supposed to
have
be.
Yeah.
Telmex.
They've been charging me and we don't even have it, so I went back, pointed it
Yeah,
out to them.
cancel it.
6 months refund. They
Yeah.
give
You did?
What
Great.
what Telmex does, this is a good thing to talk about too, since you're dealing with an internet provider here in Mexico. What Telmex does, and I bet it happens in the States a lot too, I just have over 20 years living here, is that if they change their contracts, they typically don't tell you. You typically, when you've signed up, you've agreed for 30 days or you've agreed for a year or whatever it is. If something changes, the onus is on you to go take advantage of that change. Now, what they did with Claro Video, and you do have to keep an eye on it if you're using it, they have said sign up for high-speed internet with Telmex and get Claro Video for free with an asterisk that says you get a year of Claro Video for free. What Telmex has been doing ever since they started that, well, no, I shouldn't say that. They've been doing that since they were going to start charging after the first year. The first year they did it, they did start charging after the first year.
They did?
Yeah, but only for a short period of time. And then they went to this policy of continually renewing the free subscription, which means the onus is on you to determine whether they're going to keep doing that for you or not. In my experience, they've continued to allow you to use the free subscription, but they've not made it clear when they're going to start charging for it.
Don't look give horse in the mouth.
Yeah, I think that what you need to do is when you're looking at your bill, if you see this extra charge, that's when you. The other thing that I've learned about Telmex over the years of being here is they will take things off your bill within 30 days. They will.
They
It is your responsibility to see it, bring it into them, and they will discount that within anything over 30 days is your fault. They're just doing their job. You should have been back. You should have been here in that first month, explaining that they've screwed up your bill. Otherwise, they're moving forward thinking everything's okay. So, if you have any mystery charges on your bill, you want to go in and deal with it as quickly as possible. They will not, if you've been charged for something. Well, a good example of this is your service. They used to offer new contracts at the same price, but with faster internet. So you'd go from 128K, I don't know if any of you remember when we were going that slow, to 256K for the exact same price. But everyone that had paid while it was 128 is still paying that price for 128. And you would not get the 256 unless you went into the office and said, hey, I want the 256. Nothing would change on your bill. You would just get cranked up to the higher speed.
Okay, you said experience, your experience.
Yeah.
You speak Spanish. Many of us speak so, okay? And some of us don't speak any. My experience after they turned off my telephone and charged me then for 6 months, and I went in to get a refund for at least 30 days, and she said to me, you need to call this number in Mexico City and talk to them, and I said, do they speak English? Oh yes, and I called that number, there was no English.
You ask for
You
someone
have
who
to
speaks
ask
English
them,
and
and
they'll
they
put
do.
them on.
I asked her to do it right there, and she would not do it.
No, you go home, you call the number and you say, can I speak to someone in English?
English,
They'll
please.
put them on.
English, por favor.
Well, I did that, and I
I've gotten
waited, and
English every
I
time
didn't
I
get
call.
anybody.
I did
Right,
too.
yeah.
I always do it in English because I don't hear it.
Okay, that's good.
3 tries to get it.
Okay, 3 tries.
Yeah, I think Mike's right. I think that all this stuff works. I teach this to my kids. I teach this to friends that come in. In Mexico, you always get the easiest answer. It's the easiest answer to give, not necessarily the easiest answer to get. And so you just keep plodding along, you keep asking for the answer, you keep a smile on your face, and you stay patient. And pretty soon you'll get the answer you're looking for. But if the it may not be what you want, but it will be the right answer. What you always get is the easiest answer to give. Yeah, mañana, exactly.
5 weeks.
We've all learned mañana doesn't mean tomorrow. It means not right now.
I just gave up too early.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
Yep.
Yes.
How can I watch the Super Bowl on Sunday at home without going to some restaurant?
I'm not a football person. I'm sorry.
I'm not either.
But don't they? Aren't they doing it on Amazon again?
Somebody on
But then I have to have my DNS
Cord
password.
Cutters was saying that you could get the Super Bowl.
YouTube something I thought I heard today.
Can I add something here?
Yeah, Mike. If you bring beer, you can go watch it at Mike's house.
I want to go to Jim's house.
But anyway, the service I have, you can get CBS or those networks, but they kind of died during Super Bowl big games. So if you go, there's other places to go. You can go to Sky, which is from England, and they're the halftime guys know a little bit, but not a lot. And then you can go to the Spanish stations, and when you hear Brady, Alonso, Gronkowski, 10 metros, you know it's a first down. So those are two good choices. Sky and the Spanish station.
And then they say, "Go!"
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's the easiest way.
this doesn't really help, but CBS is streaming the Super Bowl.
I didn't have good luck with
CBS,
All Access.
yeah, all access.
Yeah, and I would just get these huge pictures.
How to watch Super Bowl 2019 online. This is from Digital Trends. Give me some cable or satellite, antenna TV, live streaming. No, I don't want your advertisement. Go away.
Why did you cancel
30
it?
pesos.
Politics entered into it. I'm serious. Yeah, if you know the company, you know why. I know the company.
Oh, it looks like it would be
Some of these
can't watch
some of the
Super Bowl
decisions
unless they're
they made
subscribing to Sling
and
TV.
Where they were putting their money, I just
Is most available.
did not agree with.
You know what? It looks like it's on PlayStation
And I
2,
vote with my dollar.
Hulu, with live TV. It's on YouTube TV.
Knowing too much.
It's on.
They want you to.
I wonder if that would be worth
Watch for a little bit.
worth setting up at least a month of service. Has anybody tried using YouTube TV in Mexico?
I think I would.
Sure.
YouTube TV, the service that provides all the live TV channels.
I haven't tried
So you
that.
can watch NBC, ABC, CBS. You can watch Fox all
You have to buy
live.
that service?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you pay
Well,
for
they
that
give you,
service.
they give you an option of watching it streaming live today, and sometimes it comes up 12 hours ago.
Well, they have part of their service is a cloud DVD, a DVR, which basically means on demand. You can just grab what you want to watch.
We watch it all the time.
You do. Now, is there any limitations regionally? Like you're in Mexico. Are you doing it through VPN?
No, we're not doing it.
So you're watching like CBS Live?
I don't think we really watch much of anything live. No.
No? On YouTube TV you can't?
Gee, damn.
Okay, but like you can just dial in channels like you would on a TV set. Mike, you were raising your hand. You know something about this?
No, but it's what, on that YouTube TV, can you get Letterkenny?
What?
Letter Kenny?
Isn't that the name? Canadians, please, Canadians, two guys in a small town. You don't know this one? All the comedians are talking about it, yeah.
Okay.
You get snippets on that, huh?
Like Diamond and Silk?
Well, I was talking about television. I seen yesterday where Roku has clear video.
Claro video?
Oh, clear.
Clear video.
Clear video, that's that one you started talking about, you were gonna invest in like the TV antenna through the internet.
Oh, recast TV. That
This is
from.
called clear video, it sounds like the same thing, it's an antenna hooked to the internet that, I don't know if you can access it from, but that's your assignment for next week, clear video.
Let me write that down. I think if it is like the recast TV, it still needs to be in a location where you have
That's right,
access
you got a
to.
house in Tucson, huh, and that's
Yeah.
free, you can put that clear video antenna at your house, and I don't know if you can pick it up with a VPN or nothing down here, that's.
Yeah, I was talking with Fred this morning, and he still hasn't been able to access the recast, the Amazon recast TV from anywhere on the internet, which is what I understood you were supposed to be able to do.
You have to be on the same network.
Which means your home network.
Oh, maybe that's.
Look up. I'm making a note to look up clear video. Yeah, Mike.
I have one more Internet Super Bowl item I saw this week.
Okay.
Somebody went on Wikipedia and changed it. Description of the American League championship. That's a game to go into the Super Bowl, and they wrote that this is the game that you play the Patriots to see who goes to the Super Bowl. And it's going on for 9 years in a row now, and it was up for 15 minutes before somebody came in and changed it back to what it is.
The Patriots own the Super Bowl.
Well, the AFC Championship.
The what?
The American.
Oh, okay.
Two leagues.
I got you. I got you.
The American side, there's a national side over here.
Gotcha.
Do you ever use the Roku channel?
No,
You never do.
I never have. In fact, I don't even have a Roku in my life right now.
Can't even access it from down here.
No, you
Can't
can't?
even access it from down here.
No, I
Oh,
thought yes, you
that's the
can.
reason.
Yes, you can. The Roku channel.
Wait, have you used the Roku TV channel? The Roku channel? Yeah, let's just say we don't know unless somebody's actually using it.
I
Because
read it in Mexico's Daily News or something like that. That it's
Because
back on.
what we'd have to do is determine whether somebody with a U.S. Roku account is able to take advantage of the.
Of what?
All right, Ed's got an assignment. Can you access the Roku channel without a VPN?
I'll check it today.
Yeah.
I think
You
I
use
do.
it without a VPN? Well, you use Smart DNS.
Smart DNS.
Yeah, okay, so the.
How do you
I
get Smart
put it in
DNS?
the first day it came out, and it's been working great.
Okay. And you're still using it. You know as of recently.
In a week, but yeah.
Well, let's keep an eye on it because now that they're in Mexico, maybe that'll change just like things with Netflix have changed, just like things with Amazon have changed. That might change too. Interesting.
And Cody has a new platform as of today. Cody 18.
Cody 18. All right. I'll have to download it. Cody 18. I still haven't resolved all my issues, so I'll try a new one.
It's 64-bit and 32-bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, they had that with
Media. Okay.
they did it on Android,
Android, yes, but
Yeah.
not for Windows.
not for Windows. So Windows is now. Well, have you had a faster experience?
Yes, I've been using the 64-bit for about a year in the beta.
So one of my experiences with the 32-bit version is screen freezes. Just like you're waiting for it to propagate information, and like in a Windows 10 environment, what that means is the window of Kodi might go white for a little bit and then come back. It's on an older computer, so it might be related to that.
Change in your settings, change your, take it off, video, you gotta go to player and scroll down from player and settings.
Oh, to the
and-
hardware acceleration?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done
Take
that.
off that and change the 20%
I did to 50.
to 0.
No, I was told 50.
0.
I was told that
That takes all your CPU power. The more you render it, because you're already playing, the videos are already at that rate.
Well, I think what you're saying is right, but the way I understood it was in reverse. As
No.
you go closer to 0, the more work you're doing.
No.
Yeah.
I heard it the 0 way too. That's-
Well, I'll look at
Change
it
it to
again.
0.
You understand that?
Sort of.
I'll look at it again, but I thought I had read it over and over a number of times to understand what I was looking at, and I thought what I was reading was it was easier the higher that number was, and there's no reason to go below 20 because it offers you no advantage.
It stops the stuttering. And things download faster because it's trying to upgrade your video. And your video's already at 720 or 1080, whatever it is, so
That's right. It is the percentage of upgrade.
yes.
Yeah.
So change your
And so 0% means don't.
upgrade, so it doesn't use your processor power and you get the video as it came out.
All right, I'll look at it again. And we don't have to keep talking about Cody because there's only 3 of us. we need our own little group over here to the
I
side.
have a Microsoft Office.
Oh, sure. Anybody, Microsoft. Office has been my nemesis for the last week.
Well, you and I have spent hours and hours dealing with Microsoft Office because I like the format of the 2007.
Yeah.
But
Outlook.
After all this time, I have finally given up. And the reason why is I have these files I've saved over the years that are EML files.
Right? Email files, yeah.
And only Microsoft Office 365 will show them.
Oh, your old version isn't showing it?
Well, my 2007 will not show an EML file.
Huh.
And so I just finally gave up the ship and went to 365.
But you're not having problems with 365. You're able to set it up, make it work. Boy, I've had a weird problem with
They're paid annually, it's not cheap.
I've had a weird problem with Outlook for a customer. Brand new computer from Dell, brand new installation of Office 365. Will not use Google to send email. It says the connection is interrupted. I have removed and reinstalled and cleaned, and it is a problem that occurs on many Outlook installations trying to use Gmail as their main server, but there is no consistency to what fixes the problem. To couple with it, I had another problem where the customer uses an iPhone, and we haven't talked much about this, but in an office environment you deal with this a lot. They have to use Outlook, they have to use an iPhone. How do you synchronize your calendars, your notes, and your contacts? You have to use iCloud. So you're an iCloud user. You have to have iCloud set up on your computer. Make it even more complicated. You're on a Windows computer instead of a Macintosh computer. So I'm setting this up for them, and it keeps crashing when it comes to the synchronizing of the contacts. The only reason we're doing iCloud in the first place. But it works for photos, works for file storage, it works for iTunes, it works for all the things iCloud is supposed to do. You put the checkbox in it to make it work for Outlook, and it crashes. Turns out, here's a new one on me, it's a problem because the Dell came preloaded with Office 365. And I had to... Well, it came preloaded so that you could subscribe to it without downloading it.
We need to get rid of Macintosh.
No, this isn't a Mac problem. In fact, in this case, it's a Dell problem. In this case, it's totally a Dell problem. They, for convenience sake, preloaded the Office suite so that if you're an Office user, all you got to do is sign into it and it's all ready to go. Well, that preloaded version kept crashing iCloud. And I finally found the solution in a discussion group where some expert, how did she start her phrase? She started it with, "Oh, it's a Dell." And then proceeded to go through a half a dozen instructions how to remedy the fact you bought a Dell to fix this problem with iCloud. And sure enough, I pulled out all remnants of the Office that came preloaded on the Dell, downloaded the Office from a link from their account, because that's the way Office works now, and installed it, and the iCloud problem went away. Everything worked just fine. but there's this sending problem that has persisted through 5 different installations of the operating system. A reinstall repair of Windows 10 still persistently has this problem, and it's unique to this brand new computer.
Is she the Chinese gal in Canada?
That's Huawei, Bob. But I'm glad you're keeping up. I'm sorry you're keeping up from the beginning of the meeting, but later you can rewind all of this.
No, he's not. He's not keeping up. He's catching up.
He's catching up. Yeah.
He's not sinking.
He's buffering.
Scott, I have another issue with 365.
Oh, okay.
I go to Word and I open a document that I've been updating on a continual basis. Several days later, I go back and I go to the little file folder on the bottom where you can open any file and I can't find that file.
This is like Word. You're trying.
Yeah, it's Word.
Yeah, and you open up Word and it shows you all your previous
It shows me
files,
yeah.
and the one you were working on isn't there.
It's there in Word, but when I go to the file folders where you can open any.
Maybe it's in the cloud.
Ooh, yeah, maybe it's in your
I bet it's in the
OneDrive.
That's where I'm looking, in OneDrive.
Oh, maybe it's not in OneDrive. These are the most confusing things that happen with this stuff.
Is that the easy answer? Do I have to
That's the
keep
easy
trying?
answer. Yeah.
Too many
No,
choices.
but
then
you should verify both locations because they look very identical. They
And
have.
I do.
Yeah.
And it's, maybe I should go to the little cloud on the bottom and look there.
Well, if you do that,
Save it.
if you
I have saved it to my hard drive.
if you hit your Windows key, which has an amazing amount of power these days, and you just start typing the name of the file, it should show up.
Yeah.
It should be right there.
It was weird.
And if you need more information than that's displayed to you, when it shows up there, you can click on it with the right mouse button
Properties.
and go to Properties, and
See
it'll
where
show
it
you
is.
where it's stand. Yeah. But yeah, that's the first thing I think is exactly what was suggested. Maybe it's in the cloud. Well, that's a very good possibility. It could just be right in your OneDrive. And then if it's not in the cloud, well, then maybe it's in the other location. Maybe you're looking in the wrong place for it. But if you can bring it up,
It's somewhere.
then it's somewhere. Yeah, it definitely exists. My frustration is when you've written a document and you know it exists and you can't find it anywhere.
Well, if you went to your Word and there's a list of files previously opened.
It opens, it's there.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject, can I make one more
Just
comment?
grab it and put it
Sure.
on his front screen.
I was trying to decide whether to go ahead with 365 because it's like $75 a year,
No, it's
and but they have a new
For one license.
Oh,
One license is $70 plus tax.
But you can put that on 5 computers.
Well, one license would be $100 a year
Yeah.
then.
Well, maybe that's
I mean, 5 licenses would be $100
So you
$100
can
a
put it
year.
on-
So they have a new one out called Office 2019.
Yeah, Office
You
2019.
buy it one time, and you can only use it on one computer.
Right.
And there are no upgrades.
So, did you notice? Have you guys seen this? This is Microsoft has been nudging people into a subscription service by making it slightly more attractive than just buying the software outright. And so I saw that. Did you notice that they've dropped the price of that by $100?
No, I didn't notice.
Yeah.
I didn't price it.
You can get that version for $299, which is like the cheapest I've ever seen them giving away a full-blown version of Office. If you're in the subscription services, you can change to $219 at any time.
Is there anything the free one can't do that Office can't?
There isn't really a free one. There's
Office.
of Office. There is the mobile apps, which is not the same as the 2019
What's the
version.
Libre?
Oh, LibreOffice. Yeah, that's a free Office. I'm sorry, I thought we were talking about Microsoft Office.
Open office.
Open Office
Office.
and LibreOffice are free ones.
Is there anything that they can't do that Microsoft Office can do, the one they're paying for?
Well, I'm going to answer that question like this. I use the free one all the time. I switched to Office 365 to build the presentation for the smartphones presentation. And one of the reasons I switched to it was insanely easy to do. I was amazed at how Microsoft has redesigned the PowerPoint program. It literally was handing me the answers to the questions I hadn't asked yet. I was just dumbfounded by how intuitive it was to put together a presentation. I hadn't used the software in years. I hadn't used it since the last business presentation I had to give in the Tequilas. I mean, we're talking 10 years, right? And I was just dumbfounded that, I mean, I would throw up a slide and I'd start putting it together, and it's like, hey, you know what would be cool is if I could do this. And it was like right there in my eye line. Oh, there it is, right there. That's what I want to do. And I found very little need to go to Google for instruction. I found the help to be I wanted to make I wanted to set a picture's background to transparency. I knew it was on a solid color and I just wanted to look prettier. And under the old PowerPoint, I would have gone to a graphics program and done it there. And under the new one, I'm like, well, I don't see it. Let's just type transparent into help. And there it was, right there, how to do it. And it was actually right in front of me, and I just didn't see it. And just the whole experience made me thinking, geez, maybe I ought to be buying into this package again. It was very easy to use, and I know the LibreOffice experience on their presentation software, nowhere near that easy to use. It's just a joke to try and use. You can read the presentations, and if that's all you need to do, that's great. But if you have to build one, the Microsoft PowerPoint presentation is just generations ahead of what's happening in the free stuff. And to add to that, a few years ago, I don't know if it's still the same, but a few years ago, I started a database. I started a database for the fishing tournament many years ago. And I decided I'm going to use open source software so these people don't have to be reliant on buying an Office pack. And it was a joke. It just, I could not do it. I had everything in front of me and things were breaking and things weren't holding together. And so we finally agreed, no, everybody's just going to run Office. And I built it in Office and it worked just fine. No problems. It was very easy to do. And that's the Access database system. So in the free programs, I would say things like PowerPoint, things like database, Access database, you can't beat Office for doing those kinds of jobs.
And Outlook.
Well, in Outlook, yeah. I mean, there's an argument for you can do Outlook things with a dozen other programs out there. You can't do PowerPoint with a dozen other things out there. Your option is PowerPoint on a Windows machine, or what's the presentation on Macintosh? There's a presentation software, Keynote on a Macintosh. Those are your two options if you're really doing those things. Yes, Irving.
I'm going to recommend one that's fabulous.
Okay.
And since they started the prescription service, I've gotten away. I had them from first. I had WordPerfect and Word for many years, and I've got a lot of data files and a lot of Excel type files and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Soft Office.
Soft Office.
First of all, it downloads. It recognizes all of your old files in the Office suite, so you don't have to import it or anything.
They also have a mobile version and a desktop version, if I remember right. Soft Office.
Soft Office. It's invisible. You wouldn't know you're not using Office 365. I'm using it for years now.
But it is a purchase program, right?
I don't know. It's a free download. It's a free. If they offer a volunteer or something, I usually pay it. So I really don't know, but it's a free program.
Okay. I mean, I've run into it before. I think.
But the important thing is, it's seamless to what you were using. It's just as powerful, and you buy it and you own it, just like Word used to be.
Right, but you're not paying $300 for it.
No, it's
yeah.
No. Well, give it a good look. But I recommend it very, very highly. It's because you don't have to learn anything. Use all of your old files right into it.
I end up using Google stuff all the time. Yeah.
Nick was trying to post something for sale, and his picture was too big. And he tried to resize it, he couldn't do it, so I went Google resize, and they YouTube led me to www.websizer.com.
Websizer.
That's good to know. What a cool tool.
I just use Paint.
Yeah, Paint does
I tried
work.
that, yeah, but this was just so easy.
I do that with Photoshop.
Yeah, I don't have Photoshop.
So yeah, if please don't use Photoshop as a solution. It's impressive people that are still using Photoshop, but I think it's expensive, and there are so many tools out there that you could use other than Photoshop to do this stuff.
I have Elements, but it's back in the States.
Yeah, that are easier. That's right. Even Photoshop Elements is much easier to use than Photoshop Classic. There are some good graphic editing programs that are open source that are out there for free. One of my favorites is Paint.net. Paint.net, if I remember right, it's on all platforms. It's on Linux. It's on Macintosh. It's on Windows. It's a very fast graphics program that opens up, and it has layers, but it's a very intuitive program as well. It feels a lot like using the old Microsoft Paint with Photoshop add-ons. So you've got all of these extensive tools that are available, but it's straightforward enough. I actually
What's the name of that?
Paint.net. One of the paradigms of it that is a little different is you start with a blank document. So you're working on a document surface whenever you're doing things in Paint.net. But you can select and save in different file formats. I just find it a very easy program to jump into, like the old Microsoft Paint. I don't actually think the new Microsoft Paint is very intuitive. It uses that ribbon bar a paradigm that you've seen in Office, and you've seen it in Windows 10 when you're exploring Windows. The ribbon has really become the thing and the new Paint uses that ribbon, and if you've gotten ribbon experience, then you're ready to work your way through Paint. But Paint's been around since Windows 3.0. We have grown up with the Microsoft Paint program. It's kind of like the Notepad program. And I think they did a disservice by adapting their new style to the Paint program, because when you get into it, you're immediately you're jarred. If you haven't been using it recently, it's a whole different format than what you became so accustomed to. Paint.net feels very similar to that old Paint program, but then you've got all these advanced features in it. So I always end up going to it first.
What did you say?
Websizer.
Websizer.
For changing the size of photos.
You grab your photo and it automatically optimizes it. It was already the better size.
Another program that's open source and completely free, like Paint.net. It's open. That's the reason I mentioned it's completely free, and it's more extensive than the Paint program that comes with Windows. Is GIMP, and GIMP is not a fun program. GIMP is the open source version of Photoshop Classic. When you talk to people that are working in graphic design, they're either supporters of open source and they use GIMP, or they're supporters of Photoshop and they use Windows or Macintosh. GIMP is available across all the platforms. I've used it for years. It is so infuriating to find out how to do something new on it. It's typically one of those where somebody showed you how to do something, and that's the only time you open GIMP, is to do that one thing that you learned how to do. And then you take the photo and you open it in something else to finish everything you're doing. So I mention it because it's insanely powerful, but only if you know how to do what you're doing. Yeah, Mike.
Going back to the Huawei, is it Huawei, the Chinese firm?
Huawei.
Huawei. I haven't read much, but
There's a pot down
Oh.
there.
players seem to be.
Could I
G5,
get somebody to pass me that pot? Thank you.
Huawei.
Is it
and
empty?
The American government at this point. Do you have thoughts on the G5 and why it's such a why this could grow? to
Last
such
3/4 a
problem?
cup. Do I have thoughts on what?
G5.
Oh,
Huawei.
5G. You're talking about the new cell standard?
Yeah.
5G.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 5G.
And Huawei and the American government's fear of what they could do.
Yeah, no, we could talk about it for a long time, but I think that what's going on with the U.S. government is they want to give time for a U.S. industry to come up with the 5G technology, and Intel's not ready. And so I think they're using politics to hold back I mean, I think they've got good politics. I think it's good thinking. It's a Chinese company. They're
That's not what they said. What they said, the government was banning it for military use because it could identify where the troops are.
So you're getting right to my point. I think those are good politics. I think those are good reasons to hold it back. I don't think that's why they're holding it back. I think that's what they're telling us, and I think those are legitimate reasons to be concerned. But I think that we have the expertise to vet all that equipment, vet the installations, to make sure that it's safe. I think it really is being held back because our industry
So you
isn't.
think we're already protected, the United States is already protected with just the infrastructure it's got right now?
No, I don't think that is that the conversation we're having. I don't think that.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think what's happening right now is 5G is on the cusp of being released.
Okay.
Huawei is at the center of it because they're the only ones ready to start releasing big iron equipment. I mean, the kind of equipment that you put in a municipality, right? They're the only company. Fred, I'm going to invite you to the next Smartphones for Dummies. You want me to show you where the Do Not Disturb is? There you go.
Problem is, I put it on.
And then forget to turn it off.
2 days from now, I haven't gotten a call, and somebody's gone through somebody else to get, that they're pissed off.
Gives you an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then comes back.
That's a good way to do it. A do not disturb that's like only for 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
You just run your volume down to the bottom and then it appears.
Make it vibrate.
Just put it on
Set
vibrate,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mine does.
And it vibrates, but it doesn't ring.
And what kind of phone do you have that does it?
Samsung.
Samsung does that. Because mine, you run it down to 0, it turns to vibrate, and then you get no options.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and that's a good
Well,
example of
Shush
how
is the
all
name.
these.
You can probably import the Shush app.
Oh, is it a Shush? Is that
It's called Shush.
I'm gonna look that up. Look up Shush. Anyway, to get back to what we were talking about, I believe what's going on is our industries aren't ready to compete. We don't have the 5G technology ready to be deployed as big iron in our. And I think the Trump administration is using this as a way to hold back the infrastructure development until we've got a dog in that race. And we just don't. We have nothing. Huawei is the only option. If the government wants to set up 5G in their offices, their only bidder right now is Huawei. So I believe in the political reasons. I just don't think that's the real reason. I think the real reason is we've got no competitors.
What is the improvement from 4G to 5G or on and on?
Significant.
Is it reception? Is it
It's a world changer,
clarity?
isn't it?
It's crazy. What they're proposing is insane speeds, but they're proposing them with millimeter wave microwaves, which require equipment to be much closer to you to take advantage of it. So instead of having a cell tower, you'll have a 5G device on like a post right outside your house. Like maybe there'll be a 5G device every 1,000 yards. Instead of a tower overlooking a community, it would be more similar to how we already, it would, how we do things right now is there's a circuit for cable or a circuit for phone lines in your area, like on your street.
What you're saying is it won't happen in Mexico.
No, and it's not going to happen in rural areas. It's not going to happen in Mexico for a long time. It's not going to happen in rural areas. It's going to happen in cities because you can imagine with that kind of constraint, you're probably going to have 5G devices installed every 50 feet of a sky or 50 stories of a skyscraper, just so they can offer it to the entire building.
Couldn't they be drones?
They could be drones. Yeah, I mean, with some creative thinking, we've watched as Facebook created drones that would fly over an area and offer internet.
Google does that too.
Yeah, Google does that as well. I really don't know how it's gonna shape up as far. I mean, if we get closer to the actual equipment, I know less and less about how it's gonna look like. But I know the deployment requires it to be much closer. So what I know about drones, I'm not an expert at all, but I would say that at the moment that wouldn't be the ideal way to distribute it. I think the ideal way to distribute it, from what I understand, would be fiber optics, and it would be these base stations, and they would be like 1,000 yards apart from each other, something like that.
I can't imagine going back to that kind of technology.
What do you mean?
Phone wires going. I mean, I can't. Everything's just so wireless now. It's just so.
Well, and I'm sorry, my analogy was really meant, and I meant to say these words: the last mile.
Yeah, okay.
The last mile is what you're replacing.
Yeah,
So instead of having a cable from that circuit in your neighborhood, you just have some device, very similar to what you're doing with X-Pro, or you're doing with TCS. Your end experience would be that. You'd have something installed in your house. It would be up on your roof like an antenna. It would come. You'd have a device redistributing it in your house. And the difference is that you don't have to have that cable connected from that last mile. The last mile is wireless.
Basically, if it's going.
So wireless electricity is just around the corner, right?
That's not related to what we're talking about right now.
I know it's not related, but it's.
He's back 5 minutes.
I'm sorry, Bob's still buffering.
Well,
Related now.
Fred, what was your comment?
Well, he was talking
Basically,
about
the higher frequency you
wires
go, the shorter
and
your reception distance is. It's like with ham radio, 2 meter you can get. Well, I used to get almost 90 miles with it on a good spot.
right.
But you go down or go up to 440, and you can get 30 miles, 40 miles, and the higher you get, the lower the distance is.
Yeah, and I wonder if that that would have to deal with, like your waveforms. If you can imagine what a wave looks like, when you say shortwave, you're talking about this long wave that goes through a period of space. And when you talk about high frequency waves, you're talking about lots of waves in a short period of space. Well, you take those waves and you increase the amplitude, you make them bigger so that they can go farther. Well, then you've created a death ray. It's like pointing a microwave at people, a microwave oven. With shortwave, you can increase the amplitude without it becoming dangerous,
Well,
right?
it depends if you're using amplitude modulation or frequency modulation. Frequency modulation, everything is
The same amplitude.
frequency, same amplitude.
But it changes the size of the wave.
It changed, yeah.
But you're still down in, like shortwave, you're down in the kilohertz in
You
hertz.
can be, but 440, you're up at 440 megahertz.
Yeah, but you're not up in the microwaves. You're
You can do that. 1.2 is a ham radio.
yeah.
1.2 megahertz.
See, the way I've understood this is like we've got 1.2. You go up to cordless phones, it's 2.4
2.4.
gigahertz.
Yeah.
It goes up to 5 gigahertz, right? That's the latest standard for these base stations in your house. But if you were to crank up the amplitude, it would start getting warm, that signal.
Yeah.
And the example of it would be your microwave oven, because it's the same type of radiation. It's just more of it. It's more power going through it. What I understand about this stuff is this is all non-ionizing radiation, So you're not looking at any concerns from like radioactive concerns. You're really worried about turning it into a microwave oven where it's heat that's your concern. You're not worried about any cancerous effects. You're worried about boiling your skin off as you get more amplitude.
Concentrated.
Well, you can think of it as concentrated.
Yeah.
But the difference between communication and a microwave pizza can be how much power you put into the signal. If that makes sense.
Skip with ham radio is amazing when you can get Japan and places like that. You know, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sit out in your driveway with 5 watts and hit Japan.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and then that also works. I mean, we're going into ham club now, ham radio club. But if I remember right, that also works because doesn't it bounce off the atmosphere?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff.
The thing is, I can sit there and hit Japan with it, but I can't hit my next door neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the way the skip is. You know, I'm in Monument, Colorado, and I cannot hit Colorado Springs, and I can't hit Denver on the lower frequencies. You know.
But it has to do with the trajectory hitting the atmosphere, bouncing back.
Yeah, ionosphere, I think it is, and then bounces back down, and depending on where you're located.
And that's not clouds; that's atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's better at night, isn't it?
With stratosphere, actually, is what I think it is. I think it's.
That happens locally with marine radios.
Yeah, marine radios are low frequency anyway. I think they're what, 4,700 or 47.
I can't answer that, but I've been in Cabo and talked to San Carlos. You know.
Well, have we beat all those topics to death?
Yeah, you had a couple.
You had a couple that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I got some stuff from last week. I can't remember if I mentioned this. Did you see the thing about the big mobile networks have said they're going to stop tracking you or stop selling your tracking? They're going to keep tracking you, of course, but they're going to stop selling it to third parties. Did we talk about that last week? Okay, so
European legislation has affected that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. But what has really affected it just recently, as recent as the beginning of this month, Motherboard, a publication through Vice, did an in-depth study of what AT&T, let's see, it's AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint, what they're doing with location data, and discovered that they're selling it to third-party resellers, that you can buy all this location tracking data. This is very similar to the article in the New York Times about location data, except in the New York Times article, you're buying from a broker of information, this third party, without any idea of the reference. You didn't know where the information came from. It was just being sold in this information market. And that's really what the New York Times article was doing, was it was informing us all, it was educating us all about this information location data market that exists. And there's about 75 big companies out there. They make all their money out of selling the information that tracks your physical location at any given time. And so they use that for marketing and whatever nefarious means.
For your car.
Yeah, well, your car is an example of that kind of stuff that's tracked. And the New York Times, I would recommend looking at the New York Times article simply because it's got some great visuals that'll make you swallow your tongue. Because you will see people dots around a church service. You will see as an individual, and the reason it's okay to sell this data is because it's anonymized. And what that means is it takes your name off of it, your email address off of it, your social security, whatever, any of that stuff that's supposed to identify you off of the data. The problem is when you're talking about location data, you identify yourself just by your habits. I mean, very quickly it's easy to see who's gone to the doctor 3 times last week because they all came from the same house. And the house is very easy to look up, so now we know that you've been to the doctor 3 times in the last week. So the New York Times article, and if you look at our website, I should also announce I've done a big rebuild of this sccclub.org website. So I encourage you to go check it out. Things are easier to find. I got links to the podcasts there, as well as links to the YouTube videos, and I think it's much better organized. I put a column down the side of guest speakers, so every time we've had a guest speaker, you can find that very quickly just by looking down the side. But the New York Times article and things of that such, I will link in our meetings. And so if you go to the website, you'll find a link to that article. And I suggest it for everyone to look at, because it'll really help you wrap your mind around what kind of problem we're trying to solve. And I really feel like, and I've pushed it before in this club, is we need to be encouraging regulation, not from the guise of controlling business, but from the guise of protecting people. Because this data is being allowed to be, your location data is being allowed to be sold and made a profit off of, because we have no such thing in place to protect you from the use of this information. And we need regulation in place to say, when you finally track down how they got a hold of that information, it was illegal for them to have it, because I never told them it was okay to have it. We're not going to be able to stop this information from being out there, but we can hold businesses accountable for the way they use it. And that's really what we need, is some real regulation that say, you're not allowed to use my data unless I've given express consent. And that's what GDPR is moving towards. It's not, in the European Union, it is not great legislation, but it is in the right direction. It is focused on the individuals first. We're not trying to regulate business, we're trying to protect individuals.
Trying to protect privacy.
But when you download an app, and there's the conditions, and it says you give up your location.
And
You give up this, you give up that, and that's separate from the provider.
Well, and it's separate from all this. It's
Yeah.
separate from that location tracking that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because you can minimize your
You
location
want to play
tracking.
solitaire, you have to give up your location.
Yeah, I mean, and we need to be changing our culture. We need to go, wait, why would solitary need to know where I am? We've talked about apps before, and I'm a firm believer of, if there's a free app and not a paid app, they're selling you, right? And maybe that should be determining whether you want to use that app or not. Because these organizations, they're making a lot more money selling you than they are selling you the app. And that's what everything's turned into. Everything's turned into, how can I best sell tracking information to advertisers? And so they release apps. They release apps that are very useful. And they may not bother to release a buy app, a for purchase app, because they know they're collecting your data. You've given up your data because they're going to sell it. They're going to sell it in bulk. The scary part right now is it doesn't have to be dealt with in bulk. It can be dealt with on an individual basis. And so this motherboard article, they were able to research into the big three, and they were able to see the big three selling this data to third parties, which the New York article does not make it clear where the third parties are getting this data. Whereas in the motherboard article, they have documentation showing AT&T selling this information.
And you have this all on scc.org?
scclub.org.
Club.org.
Yeah, that's our website. Yeah. And so when I talk about stuff like, and I'm talking about it right now. So in today's podcast, I'll have links to this article. I'll put a link. I'll put a link to the New York article again, so it'll be one of the first posts on the website. But what they did is they confronted AT&T and T-Mobile, and they immediately backed down. T-Mobile, they came out just like hours afterwards. They came out with a statement saying they are going to stop this practice. They have set a date when they're going to stop it. I don't know what that's all about, but they said by March it's going to be. They're not going to be doing it. Maybe it has something to do with contracts they have in place with these third-party data vendors where they could get sued if they cut them off too quickly. I don't know. It took Sprint 2 weeks to succumb to the peer pressure of these other cell providers making this statement. It took 2 weeks of them being threatened by their customers to move to the other two before they finally relented and said, no, we will as well stop this practice. And they have an indeterminate date for when they're going to stop it. But they have a public-facing statement right now.
It's a big revenue stream they're giving up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one of the most surprising things that we're learning about all this is that is the revenue stream.
Sure.
That is the revenue stream.
Does that mean our cell bills will start going up once these
Maybe.
revenue streams are cut off?
Maybe. I mean, at the very least, I wouldn't put it past them to try and do that. For them to say, look, for us to give you the kind of privacy you're asking for, we're having to change our plans. And so if you want a privacy plan, you're going to pay more for it. There was talk a long time ago. In fact, there was back 10 years ago, I remember they were giving away cell phones as long as you kept the advertising on it. Right?
And so you paid more for minutes.
What?
The phones were cheap.
Well, that was another plan, but they had a plan where you could make all your phone calls for free. You just had to listen to advertising beforehand.
I didn't have that.
Well, it didn't work out. I mean, it was something they tried for a few months and nobody really. But when this comes to a head, you can bet they're going to have private plans and they're going to have advertising plans. They're going to have tracking plans. They'll have pretty names for it. They'll have the economic plan where you opt out of privacy, right? They'll have the economic plan where all you have to do is listen to some advertising before you make your phone call, right? Or after you make your phone call. And how would you like a cell phone that after you make a phone call, you hang up, it calls you back, and it gives you an advertisement, and it continues to do that until you finish listening to the advertisement?
Oh, they have a
leave
phone
it
like
on
that.
and walk away.
This will come to a head because people are so privacy is such a big deal right now. Well, I've got other topics that we haven't gotten to that are still relevant, so I'll keep them for next week since we've reached the end of this meeting. Is there anything we haven't hit before we?
We haven't talked about stoves.
Stoves.
We talked about refrigerators. I want to talk about stoves.
I suggest next week we start with your topics and then.
Okay.
I have a small topic, and I'm sure that it's a personal thing, so I don't need to take everybody's time up. But whenever I run sound through this into my Bose, it's very bassy, and my wife has trouble with her hearing, and I've gone in to try and equalize.
Is it an iPad?
Yep.
So an iPad, and there is an equalizer?
Well, I haven't been able to find it.
Is anybody with an
I go on the net and
iDevice?
it tells me how to get there, but you can't even start because there's no.
You can't mute it?
I can mute it, but that's
Okay,
not what
then
I'm-
headphones won't work?
Well, he wants to put them on some external speakers, and the problem is that there's too much bass, and his wife can't enjoy the music. What you're looking for is something to normalize that volume.
to crank down the bass.
Crank down the bass.
Spend more money on your
Bose.
Is
speakers.
The easy way out.
Yeah, that's right.
is Judy still here? Did she
No.
take off?
No, she
Yeah.
She
Anyway,
is.
if everybody knows that I'm looking for that, maybe somebody will notice it.
Mike, did you have a
The only thing
suggestion?
Does it have to do with
I
quality,
talked,
the quality of the speaker?
Before about that JBL speaker I got.
Speaker.
Yeah.
You can hook up, I think it's 50 of them up to the same music or whatever you're gonna listen to. Yeah.
Really?
You can synchronize.
The
50.
JBL, and that would be a
Zero,
JBL
And it's a
function.
waterproof thing, it's called, Flip 4.
Huh.
So on a boat it'd be, if it got wet, it'd be perfect, if you had to close up on it.
But I just like the idea that it would synchronize so that that's a JBL thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
Which
so
I
you,
saw when I got it, the name Harman was in there. Did anybody remember Harman?
Yeah, sure,
Harman?
sure,
Oh,
yeah.
that's a great product.
right.
So I don't know if they bought JBL or whatever they merged, I don't know what happened there, but Harman was a great product.
It was.
Yeah.
Well, it's John, right? Jim,
James,
sorry,
James.
James. I don't have any good information at the moment. I think that you're looking for an equalizer on the iDevice.
That's right.
Yeah, and it might have to be a third-party application, but I have no information on that.
Just
And then the only other thing would be any What was the speaker manufacturer?
JBL.
Bose. So the only other thing was, I would hope that Bose would have an app or would have a controller on it.
There's no control.
Is there an app for it? Yeah, you might. In fact, let's just quickly look and see if there's any kind of app for Bose in the App Store.
It's just if I run a radio program on this, it's got this little speaker that big, and I've got a really nice Bose, and it just comes out really basic, even for my ears. But for Carolyn, it's just like boom, 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 boom. There's no, you just can't hear the rest of the music.
Nice with Bose is they're very responsive to customer questions and complaints.
Yeah.
Yours comes to worse.
Hold on 1 second. Double check that your model doesn't support an app. There are Bose apps in the App Store, and so it's possible. It's Bluetooth, right? The speaker?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's possible that they've got a controller that's intended for stuff like that.
Well, they just scared everybody away.
No. We got to shut down. We're 15 minutes over.
Okay,
In fact, James, if you give me 1 second, I'm just going to shut down the meeting. Unless Gary's got one more thing.
Yeah. When you were talking about how to make 800 calls,
Yes.
and you gave us those.
Yeah, the corresponding dialing.
Do you have to do the actual symbol of plus, and then a 1, and then the 800, or how do you do that?
On your cell phone, you would do that.
Right.
Yeah.
You do.
And you make a plus by holding 0.
By holding the 0.
Yeah, and it should show that on the dialer. You should see a plus on the dialer
Okay.
under the 0, and you hold it, and then a plus appears.
Okay.
And so if it's a number in the United States, it would be +1. If it's a number in Mexico, it'd be +52.
52. Right. Coming
Tell your friend to
Right,
get some
right.
legal
Gotcha.
And it's one of those things. I'm actually regarding the smartphone presentation. I'm still editing it. I've done. I'm about 2/3 of the way through it,
On that,
editing the video.
you'll have that in there.
And I have added that because we had talked a little bit about it, but it wasn't clear, and so I've added it as text on the video. I would have loved to have said in your cell phones, if you add the international dialing, if you add the +1 or the +52 for the Mexican numbers, you'll always dial it correctly. So if you take your cell phone to another country, if you have those symbols in it, it's going to dial that number correctly from that other country.
Yeah, because a couple of times I've gotten the phone call and it shows this.
So it shows the +1, yeah. And that's become a standard on the mobile devices now. So the best advice I could give people with contact lists for their mobile devices is to put those codes right in there. Yeah. There have been in the past, it still exists, a dialing assistant that is in the phone. It's part of iOS and it's part of Android, and it's supposed to look at the phone number you're dialing, look at the location you're in, look at how the location you're typically and where your service is from, and figure out how to dial it. Doesn't always work. What always works is +1, +52. So we just need to start getting the habit of fully qualified international dialing in our address books. We'll fix that problem.
It's like getting used to the 10 digits.
Right.
Hey,
7 was so fun. 4 was great.
yeah. All right, so I am going to say this has been the San Carlos Computer Club. We meet every Tuesday from 9:15 to 10:15-ish. I am Scott Stimson from International Computer Solutions, and if you have computer issues anywhere on the internet, I'd appreciate you getting a hold of me. You can write me at scott@internationalcs.net or visit our website, internationalcs.net. If you're local, call my office at 226-0209. If you're not local and you have a mobile phone, dial +52 622 226 0209. You can also reach my cell phone, +52 622 855 8299. If you are interested in the San Carlos Computer Club, you can check out our website at scclub.org. Like I mentioned earlier, I've done a big rebuild of the site, so it looks completely new. It's a little better organized. I recommend anybody to check it out. You can go there to listen to these meetings live as they happen, or you can find recordings as podcasts for posterity on that website or wherever you get